It's Sunday, and I'm wrapping up the week by summarizing this week's theme, which is Trump's tariff turbulence. I was all set to record a completely different and unrelated theme around financial scams in the new age of AI and how to spot and avoid those. But the stock market had a complete meltdown this week. So I thought, you know what? It'll be timely and probably a better use of my time and hopefully more interesting and helpful to you as the listener if instead I switch gears and talk about the Trump tariffs. So, in case you missed any of the episodes this week, I talked about the risks of tariffs to the economy, but also the uncertainty that surrounds the tariffs, like what's proposed versus what gets implemented and what sticks around over the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months and beyond. There are still huge question marks about that. The other thing I think it's important to remember is that the US is using tariffs as bargaining chips for Trump's policy goals, specifically around immigration. I mean, there's other things too, but a lot of it has to do with the illegal immigration and wanting to curb that and get some help from Canada and Mexico primarily to curb that. The US is in a much better bargaining position, and that's just the reality. Canada and Mexico rely a lot on the US, so the tariffs could actually work. We'll see, but they could work. I also think wide-scale, large tariffs that have impacts across the board are unlikely. We saw this in the first Trump administration because if you recall, there was tariffs that Trump implemented, most notably with China, and there were some impacts felt in the economy. Like if you were buying a new washer and dryer, you would have seen the tariffs impact the pricing of that, but it impacted pockets of the economy and not the economy as a whole. And there was no noticeable slowdown or effect on the economic growth. I do think, though, that the economy is in a slowing down. Things are sort of moving in the wrong direction, but I don't think the economy is going off of a cliff either. And the problem with all of this is that it's all fine until it's not. And so it just remains to be seen to what extent the tariffs will impact the economy and as a result, the markets. So what can we do about it? Well, I talked about the number one thing is don't panic and sell. It can be scary to watch when the market reacts strongly to the reality of tariffs. It's like, whoa, like all of a sudden this feels different. There's a lot of anxiety about the tariffs and how that's going to impact and how it already has impacted the stock market. So it's very tempting to just freak out and be like, get me out of here. But we don't want to do that. On the flip side of that, we do want to rebalance and take excessive risk out of your portfolio, out of the market. And one of the things that I've noticed that is concerning over the last several years is many people have become complacent. And so they don't want to reduce their allocation to stocks to a more prudent and reasonable level because they've enjoyed the growth that they've seen over the last 5, 10, even 15 years, all the way back to the recovery after the financial crisis. And then lastly, I talked yesterday about increasing your cash savings, money market CDs, as well as looking at some safe haven assets and repositioning into areas like dividend growth stocks, more into fixed income, etc., as a way to provide stability and income to your portfolio. Those are, I don't know, the 10 takeaways. How many takeaways was that? Usually I stick with like 1 to 3, but that was a lot because there's a lot going on with these tariffs. And I think if I'm doing my job and what I'm hoping to accomplish through this podcast is to help you live a more financially stable and meaningful retirement. And if my guidance this week helps you to get off your fanny and finally reduce the risk in your portfolio if you have excessive risk, if you have too much in stocks, then I will have accomplished my goal. So if you're enjoying the podcast, be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss an episode. Please leave a review. Your feedback helps me improve the podcast. It also helps new listeners find the show. And lastly, share the podcast. Do you know somebody who is getting close to retirement? You probably do. And so please share the show with them. And if you're interested in learning more about working with me, you can check out my website, truenorthra.com. There you can book a 15-minute call with me. You just click the link in the upper right-hand corner of the homepage. I love talking to listeners. I love hearing from you. I'm happy to chat about anything on your mind regarding retirement, no strings attached. Tomorrow, I'm starting a brand new theme that I'm very excited about: 40 life lessons in 40 years. I'm still working on my list, actually, but I'll figure it out. I'm turning 40 at the end of March. And while I'm starting to notice gravity's pull on my face, I want to take the opportunity to share with you some life lessons I've learned now that I've officially reached midlife. Well, actually, no, I think based on life expectancies, I have maybe about 5 more years before I'm at the crest of that hill, before I start on that downward slope. But I've spent the last few weeks sort of scribbling down some life lessons. I still have a long way to go and a lot more to learn, but thankfully I'm about halfway through my life expectancy, so I still have time. But, none of us, I think, are where we ought to be. So I thought it would be a fun way to mark what feels like a really big milestone birthday, turning 40 with 40 life lessons that I've learned in 40 years. One should be to not procrastinate because I have nowhere near 40 right now. So I got to kick my butt into gear and work on that. All right. I hope you have a blessed Sunday. My name is Ashley Michike, and this is the Retirement Quick Tips Podcast.